My first job as a law clerk, an attorney, was as a law clerk to Judge Richard Conboy. He wasn't on the federal bench, then he became a federal judge later. But he was a great mentor. He never lost his temper. And sometimes you could lose your temper between clients and lawyers. He was always calm and collective. He treated you like a human being. He actually treated me as if I knew something. And you don't know too much when you start as a new lawyer. And he treated you with full respect and made you feel wanted. So I had applied to a couple business schools like University of Kentucky. You're in the South now, you know, you're not thinking the Great North, the University of Kentucky. But I met I had a job as a janitor down there, and I met all the professors, and one of the professors, and some of the people down there, including Bob, said he was going to law school, and he talked me into going to law school, so I went down, he gave me his card, and I went down to Memphis and took the test, and I became a lawyer. I mean, that's pretty, but you had to go to law school, and I actually was going to law school at the University of Tennessee, and there was a fellow, psychology professor who graduated from University of Pittsburgh, and he didn't like the South. He had and he was a psychiatrist, really, and Pittsburgh was noted for that, for mental health and psychology. And he talked me into going to the University of Pittsburgh. He actually got an application for me, and I ended up at the University of Pittsburgh. Finished Pittsburgh and became a lawyer. My first job was with Judge Conboy. That's pretty much it. When I started as a judge, I felt I needed more training, so I ended up getting a master's degree in judicial studies, judicature, at the University of Nevada. Was where all judges went to get master's degrees or further education in those days. So I did that, and so I became very versed in civil law and evidence, in court procedure, and the criminal end of things. And we were having a real problem in our court with custody cases. Protection from abuse was a new law that just started, and we had people lining up to do that. And we had 6 judges in those days, and we were rotating cases. So no one knew anything particularly about family law, child support, custody, protection from abuse. And Judge Walsh asked me to do that, if I do that. And I'm thinking, I just finished school and got myself boned up on civil and criminal stuff. And now to take over family, I don't know anything about families and family law. And I don't think any of us did. And we had people waiting in the hall sometimes all day. They'd come in the morning, wait all day long to have their case heard, and sometimes it'd be so late they'd go home and have to come back another day. Just wasn't organized, and it was coming on real strong. We had 15 to 20 what they call special relief cases every week, because the system, the lawyers on a custody case needed their cases heard faster. So there were problems that existed, and Judge Walsh asked me to solve it, and I said, I'd do it for 1 year. I mean, it's a little crazy. I invited we looked at the phone book, and anybody the court had recommended or had done stuff for the court in custody, we invited, and we invited every therapist and psychologist in the Yellow Pages. And I invited them in for coffee one morning, and there were about 94 of them. We had 90 show up. And the basic thing, I told them where we were, and we were designing a new system, and asked, what do we as a court system, what are we doing wrong? And they said, you're hurting people, you're not helping people. Well, that was it. That was the turning point in my career, actually. I met every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. We had drug and alcohol, mental health, community, children and youth and juvenile directors, sometimes the commissioners, and anyone in the community that we thought would help the particular area we were looking at. Like Dr. McClevich, he's the person who finished the doctorate program at Temple in family dynamics. And he was a great writer. We started a thing called Kids First, which we did a couple pilots, and I ordered everybody that was into a custody case to go to this class, and they said it helped. They got the focus away from the parents who were injured and damaged, to think about their children and what we could do for their children, not for themselves. When I became a president judge, it was another issue, the Chief Justice of the court said, they had a meeting for president judge, and he said to me, we have the highest rate of sending children to reform school or foster care, even more than Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. I said, geez, I didn't know anything about dependency and children. They weren't particularly part of what I considered family. So we just started looking at them, and when we started, we had over 592 children that were in reform school or foster care, and we got that number down. In the juvenile system had over 300. We got that down into the double digits, like 80, 90. First of all, it saved the county money, but if you send a child to a reform school, well, not reform, they called it a correctional institution. You send them to well, first of all, they pick up some pretty bad habits. Now they learn some things that are good, and they come back. Even some of the places were military places where the children would come back and they'd say, yes, sir, no, sir, but they're going back into the same environment that they came out of. Same family, and most times it was family. You had to work with the family. Like now, we're in third or fourth generation of dysfunctional families in our society. That's got to be weighing a society down, and we then started working with the parents of the children, and we had special programs for that. And we brought people who knew what they were doing, and I certainly didn't know it. But we had try to lean on people who were capable of just figuring out what to do, and those things worked pretty well. We were doing all right with that. I think we have to pay attention to families more. We don't pay a lot of attention. We hurt families and the way we deal with them. And poor people struggle. When you're struggling financially, you get into arguments, then it spirals into father's out of the house, father loses his job, mother got 4 kids to take care of. If we paid more attention, and I think the courts are in position to do that, but it would take a major shift in the way you do it and the court dynamics. But I do think the court has an opportunity to do that. I don't know if they will, but you do have an opportunity because you're up front, you're in the trenches, and you see the problems. Actually, when we started, that was the first thing we looked at was protection reviews. Good people sitting out in the hall all day for custody and domestic violence. And Wilkesboro, I asked the state which county had the best program for dependency. And Luzerne County did. Chester Murawski was running a program down there. Anyway, when we started to separate, keep father out of the house because he's abusing mother, or mother abusing father, but there's still abuse in the house. It's no good for children to see, and it's not good to be involved in. So, but we wanted fathers to visit, and sometimes it was dangerous. There's a thing called AOTC, Sharon McCrone. She had a program. They were all the ladies retired, and we asked them to do visitation. They did visitation for families for us, which was a great help because it didn't help us so much, certainly helped the children, I believe. Families have to be treated with more dignity and respect. And at that time, they were in the halls. We had no system for moving them through an orderly system. And it wasn't my idea, try to help them. And I liked that idea, and it helped us a great deal in those days. I liked what was happening. We were able to help people. You feel good when you can help somebody. The first big funding came from the Briggs Foundation. My legal partner was the former Joe Credder had a say in that, and he provided lots of big funding for a couple of the big programs. Scranton Area Foundation, Jean Bouvard often came to our meetings and did lots of programming, smaller programming, but did a lot. The PNC and Blue Cross and Blue Shield provided us, paid for speakers and luncheons and for rent when we had to get to halls. They were important. Even, you need petty cash around. There's a lawyer, Jim Reed, his name was. He said he represented somebody. I always thought it was coming out of his pocket. He'd give us $1,000 maybe a couple times a year. Get people before their teeth were bad. They needed either emergency dental care, emergency medical care, and you could take it out of that fund, or their car was impounded, and now they can't get to work, and Jim Reed's fund did that. Senator Mello was solid every year. Great, big chunk that we depended on every year, and it worked very well for us. And some of the agents, and some people volunteered to do stuff. Keep learning. When you're green, you're growing. When you're ripe, you go the other way. Always try to improve yourself and work at it. Treat everybody with dignity and respect, no matter who they are. It gets tough sometimes, but if you could do that and try to help, give a helping hand where you can. And the other, I always say, give a little extra today. I may not notice it, but your next job, they'll notice. Somebody will notice you're doing extra, and it'll help you in the long run. Well, I don't watch much TV. I'm not on Facebook or any of the social media things. I like hiking. I like biking. They're two major things. I'm not hiking as much now, a little issue, but I like going to the gym. I go to the gym. I try to stay fit. My spare time, like when I'm not doing those things, I like to read a great deal, and I do jigsaw puzzles at night before I go to bed. For instance, I didn't have a jigsaw puzzle last night, and I read a book, the book I was reading, and it came a pretty gruesome chapter on native up in northern Michigan, where a lady had rattlesnakes, and she was a herbologist, and they called her a witch, but and then I ended up dreaming about it. So that's why I like to do the jigsaw puzzle from an hour or so before I go to bed. Calm down, get my mind. It's like meditation. And you're doing that. It is. It's kind of meditative. My first 10 years were civil and criminal. And in my last year, I switched to the family. The 10th year, I actually told Judge Walsh I would do family. He asked me for a couple of years. I was reluctant. And then I got family, so that's 1 year. 24 years. I'm still doing some stuff, but I can't work as a judge. I work as a hearing officer doing dependency cases, or neglect and abuse cases. And it's a system I knew well. In fact, I was the chair of the bench book when the state did their first bench book. I was the chair of that. So I know that area, and it was not a detriment to me to try to pick it up. Some of our hearing masters do some tough work with custody cases, and they're writing opinions, and I don't have to do that. I listen to the case, try to encourage the parents, and of course you got a pretty good children youth service. They're good, and it's hard work, and they go to the homes and try to work with the families. And they try to tell the families, work with this caseworker if you want to get out of this system. And so but I had 25 years or 24 years as a judge, and then I've been doing this dependency stuff. I was off a year, and then Judge Corbett called me back and asked if I would do it. So I've been doing that. I think I'm on my 5th year of that. And I enjoy it. I like coming in. I'd like to see the courts really concentrate on families and do programming concentrated on the children. That's your end result. If you help the children, you help the system, you help the community.